Thank you for coming. This is the collaboration workshop between SWE, IEEE, and SHPE for preparing for conferences, since the SHPE conference is coming up and so is SWE. We're also collaborating with FIU's Career and Talent Development, and we have our Engineering Career Advisor, Joseph Jutan. And I'm Julie Viamin, the SWE Event Coordinator. And we have several other of our e-board members from SWE as well as IEEE and SHPE. So thank you all for coming, and Mr. Jutan, you can take it away.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, so just as Julie said, I'm the career advisor for engineering majors. My office is at EC in the Pit, but I haven't been back there since March. I'm pretty sure you guys are probably the same, being remote. But as Julie said, we are going to be talking about preparing for, career fairs, conferences, well, mostly conferences, because as everyone knows, the next ones are SWE and SHPE. So we're going to go through everything. Hopefully, you guys find it very engaging. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me or to type in. I probably won't be looking at the chat that much just because I'm going to be focusing on the content. So if there's a pressing question, you could unmute your mic or interrupt me. I'm not going to be offended in any way. So we'll kind of jump straight into this. All right, so we always start our workshops and our special requests with these career readiness competencies. FIU and higher ed in general are part of an association called NACE. And what that stands for is National Association of Colleges and Employers. And essentially, it's a partnership that was formed to identify the top 8 skills that employers look for internships and for entry-level jobs. And the key word there is entry level when it comes to jobs. And not sure if you guys have heard of the term technical skills versus soft skills or transferable skills, but everything that you learn in your classes are part of the technical set of skills that you are currently obtaining. And everything that we go with for transferable or soft skills are what you see on the screen. So you could demonstrate these skills in a variety of different experiences. If you've worked retail or you've done tutoring or freelance work, dog walking, beach cleanup, you need these skills in any field, if I'm being honest. Hence the word transferable. So the top I don't think it's in this presentation, but what do you guys think, like from this list, at least when it comes to engineering, that the top 2 skills that engineering employers are looking for? What do you think the top 2 are?
Number 1, critical thinking and problem.
Yeah, so it's did someone else have a thought, or the second one?
Solving.
Say again, I'm sorry.
Problem solving.
So problem solving is number 1, but what do you think is the number 2 skill?
Teamwork.
Teamwork. Yeah, you're right, Catherine. So teamwork, it's number 3 on this slide, but definitely when it comes to engineering, you're never really a one-person show. It's always teamwork. Different teams working on different parts of a project, which ultimately comes together for a final thing. So yeah, so good job on that. And just to kind of go through a couple of these real quick, the critical thinking, of course, problem solving. You guys are, most of you, I'm assuming, are going the traditional undergrad to industry pipeline, meaning as soon as you finish your undergrad, you're probably going to jump straight into the workforce. And most of you are probably going to be going for private sector or companies that are in the business of making money. So if you can position yourself on your LinkedIn, on your resume, in your interview at networking events as someone who is a problem solver or someone who's going to get the job done, that's going to put you at a very strategic advantage. Because when you think of it from a business standpoint, businesses are in the business of making money. At the end of it, it kind of boils down to dollars and cents, shareholders, and money. So if you can put yourself in that light, that's always going to be great. Someone who's not just a doer, but someone who solves issues or is a critical thinker. Number 2, oral written communication skills. Oral meaning, at least when it comes to the networking, which is we're gonna talk about that for the conferences, and also in the interview. And written communication meaning your resume, of course, and any other documents like if you have a portfolio or if you have a cover letter attached to your applications, which you should have. We just talked about teamwork, collaboration, Digital technology means using software specific to your field to accomplish certain tasks or solve problems. So I know for mechanical, I know it's always AutoCAD, you know, Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. I know for biomedical, it's stuff I think like MathCAD. There's a ton of different softwares depending on your major, but just being able to effectively use that software to get the job done or get the task done. Leadership, so not only being someone who is able to take direction, but also being able to step up to the plate and be a leader yourself. So a good balance between the two is also very essential. Professionalism, work ethic, whatever you consider to be professionalism and good work ethic, and whatever that employer defines good work ethic or professionalism. Because I'm pretty sure, at least I hope, most of you would not want to go and work for a company that conflicts with your own values or what you define as ethical versus not. Career management, basically that what this means is being able to really dig deep and reflect and identify what your skills and your experiences are and how that helps you stand out, and being someone who's effectively being able to communicate that to an employer based on the position that you are probably applying for. So just kind of your skill sets, your experiences, and how is that going to be of benefit to the employer, and effectively articulating that ideally in an interview to them. Global intercultural fluency, that's actually the newest one. I think it's been on there a couple of years now. It's probably not so new anymore, but being able to work with others from different backgrounds, culture, the ethnicity, sexual orientations, religions, the whole spectrum. So that is career readiness competencies. Any questions about this? I think this kind of makes sense for the most part. Awesome. Okay. So the importance of a conference or a career.
I think I saw a message in the chat for you.
Okay.
Melissa, is there a list of those type of softwares that are needed per major?
I don't have a list of that. Usually most of my students already know the software that they use. If you're probably in your freshman or sophomore year, you probably might not be using any technical software at this point. You may or you may not. But I can always follow up with you if you want to see if there is a list for that. I'll double check. Okay, so the importance of a conference/career fair. Hopefully most of you know the conference does have the career fair portion, usually towards the end, but the ability to meet with employers at one convenient location. So the convenient location is going to be from your house or wherever, whatever that looks like for you. Some of you, I'm pretty sure, I already know a couple of faces in here have been to in-person conferences. Some of you, this might be your first conference, which happens to be a virtual fair or virtual conference. But basically, before COVID, it would be in a different state every year or a different city, depending on the conference. So networking with representatives from a variety of different companies. And that doesn't always have to be tied to just the career fair portion of the event. There's going to be a ton of different info sessions, workshops, hospitality suites, just a variety of different ways, even in hallways, to connect with employers. I actually had one of my students who actually worked for the department, who he is now working with, he was electrical, he's now working with Northrop, I believe, in Texas. And he went to either SHPE or HENAC, I forget which one. And the way he eventually ended up with that full-time opportunity is a recruiter from Northrop at the actual conference decided to make small talk with him in the hallway. Like you have like the rooms, and then you have a hallway with like the chairs where you kind of just hang out, check your phone, whatever. The recruiter decided to make small talk with him, and they networked, and that eventually led to an interview, and for him to kind of get that full-time job. So you never know. Networking is super important at these conferences or career fairs. So it's a chance for you to make a first great impression with those recruiters. And of course, you have a chance to explore different careers and different types of internships if that's what you're looking for. But I'll kind of get into this the whole of this presentation is how to prepare for the fair. But these are just some of the bullet points here the reasons why it's important and why you should attend. So on the flip side, why do you think employers go to conferences, career fairs? The main thing you might be thinking, of course, is to recruit candidates. That's the main reason why they are there. So don't get into the trap mentally where you think they're not going to want me, there's always better people around, because sometimes that can limit you and detract from certain opportunities, just in your interactions with a recruiter. So always just remember, they're there, they want you to succeed, and they want to hire people because that's their job. As a recruiter, that's all they do. Fill for internships, part-time jobs, full-time jobs, and they have a caseload of positions. And if they don't, fill all the positions that they need to, I'm gonna say it's gonna be a detriment, but it's not good. They need to fill their position. So just kind of go into this thinking that, yes, they want you, and you have the skills of experiences that you're going to sell to them, obviously in an interview or in a networking session, to hopefully, fingers crossed, obtain that position. So of course, to advertise their company, sometimes the employers attend these conferences to brand their company and to kind of promote the positions that they have, provide career information, identify potential candidates. So just a couple tips here, at least from the employer perspective. So we're going to go through a couple things, like a roadmap about what you should be doing before the conference or before the career fair. That's the biggest thing when it comes to a conference, is not actually attending, but I want to say 75% of the work is actually before, right? Always starts with the resume. That's kind of like the foundation when it comes to full-time jobs and internships, because you could have a slew of different projects, work experiences, research experience, leadership involvements, volunteer work. And if you don't have that industry standard resume that employers are looking for, you are going to be at a substantial disadvantage compared to other students. So kind of get this right from the get-go, and then you don't have to worry about this part anymore. Once you get the resume set, it's all about the actual applications, the interviewing skills, and the networking. All right, so a couple bullet points here I'm going to go through. Just make sure it's easy to read and consistent. I like to recommend Times New Roman or Calibri for the font type. You could use whichever one you want, honestly, but don't use like Comic Sans or something ridiculous. Just keep it very conservative. You could use either 10-point font, which is as small as I would recommend, because then it gets too small to read. And then you could go as far as 12 if you are someone who may not have as much experience on your resume. So 11 is a good in between for those sizes. Make sure you're using either 1-inch margins or 0.5. That resume sample on the right is actually narrow margins. And with narrow, of course, you could fit more on the page compared to 1-inch. Always start those bullet points with action verbs, and make sure you use keywords from the job description or the internship description for a position that you're applying for. So make sure you have your general purpose resume, but always remember to tailor your resume to each position that you apply for. Don't use any personal pronouns, I, me, my. Always keep it, just like it says there, like registered, verified, and short. So no personal pronouns, and always one sentence per bullet point. One bullet point can go into a second line, like you could see there in the leadership section, where it says participate in seminars, but that's all one sentence. So don't make that mistake, and don't use paragraphs. Always bullet points that start with action verbs. I like to recommend keeping it to 1 page, but if you have enough experience to justify a 1.5 pages or 2 full pages, that's completely fine. So it's always going to be dependent on you and your unique experiences that you've had. If you have any questions about this, or you want a more detailed review of it, you could always book me for an appointment or attend virtual drop-ins, right? And all of that is through your Handshake account. So to create the win, just a couple more things here. Strong, concrete objective or professional summary. I've seen a trend in industry where recruiters are moving away from the objective and more so to preferring a professional summary. I don't have an example right here in this PowerPoint, but I'll send it to you guys after the presentation. But either or is fine. It's never going to be if you have an objective or you have a professional summary, or if you didn't use anything and you just started with your education, it's going to put you at a disadvantage. The only time it's going to be a detriment is if you apply for, let's say, something with Boeing and you forgot to change your objective and you applied with the same resume with Lockheed or Kimley Horn or whoever. So always remember, tailored for each position. Make sure you highlight those, relevant experiences. Don't have a blanket work experience, a blanket experience section. Make sure you have work experience. projects, leadership experience, volunteer experience, research experience. It just makes it very easy for a recruiter to pinpoint the types of experiences that you've had and align them with the positions that they need to recruit for. Make sure you also do accomplishments, not just responsibilities. If you can, at least in the bullet points, show or use numbers, outcomes, or results, action-oriented bullet points, that's going to put you at an advantage. Because if someone on their resume, they just have responsibilities, I did this, I did that, and then you have worked in a team of 4 that accomplished ABC, 1, 2, 3, which resulted in 5, 6, 7, that tells me that you are results-driven or outcomes-driven. Kind of going back to the NACE competency, problem solver, critical thinker. Make sure you use those keywords and action verbs. If you were going to an in-person conference, I would say bring as many copies of your resume as you can. You don't want to be stressed at a conference trying to think, oh my God, I'm kind of running out of resumes. I have to run to the FedEx store to print copies. So obviously you guys aren't going to run into those issues being as how SWE and SHPE are going to be virtual. Just a couple statistics here to kind of get you guys thinking or kind of making a connection. Remember the NACE career readiness competencies. This is just showing the attributes that employers prefer. So as you can see, 82% is the problem solving, working in a team. That's also up there. So we kind of got those 2 first, correct. And then we have the communication skills, the leadership. As you can see, all of these skills are transferable or soft skills. So if you are someone who has not had as much engineering experience, or if you hadn't had an internship yet, and you've demonstrated these types of experiences in an unrelated field, tutoring, volunteer work, whatever, don't make the mistake of thinking they're not going to be interested. Because if they see you are an effective team player at Starbucks, they're going to be confident you're going to bring that same teamwork skill or attribute into a engineering internship or entry-level full-time job. So this is, it's kind of far back, but I checked it, it's more or less the same up until 2020. But just a scale here, number 1, no influence, number 5, extreme influence. Has completed an internship, almost at 5. Pretty sure you guys know the gateway to a full-time job with engineering companies is usually an internship in your junior year. Even if you don't get a full-time job or a transfer over into a full-time position with that company, if company A sees you had an engineering industry internship with company B, they're going to be more inclined to want to interview you or offer you a position, seeing as how you've had that experience in the field. I won't spend too long on this just because we have a couple more things to go through. So of course, major, and then we're just kind of going in descending order. So the least thing they're really looking for is, school you attended, the GPA isn't that as important anymore. Standard is a 3.0. If you have below a 3.0, it's never going to rule you out, but always be prepared to have that talking point with an employer, whether at the conference, in the hospitality suite, in the interview, because if they say, I see you have a 2.7, usually we prefer a 3.0 and above. Can you explain why your GPA is a bit lower? Just be prepared, because if you try to wing it, it's going to be obvious you're winging it, and you never want to be in that situation. And a couple more here, as you guys could see with the competencies. So kind of going back to the preparation for the conference or the career fair, it's as simple as going on the SWE website, going on the SHPE website, and looking at the company list, looking at the companies who are going to be at that fair, and you are just going to be using, standard good old Google to research these companies. Go on their website, go on their LinkedIn profile, go on their profile on the actual conference website. Just pull from as many sources as you can so you could be as informed as you can be with who's going to be attending. Identify the top companies in your field and also the top companies for you personally. So again, just look at their vision, their mission, their goals. If company A, was in the news for a huge jump in their stock price or some big achievement, that's something you want to be in the know about, because it's going to be very awkward if you attend at the conference and somehow that comes up and you are looking very ignorant, not knowing that this big thing just happened a month ago, a week ago, and you are actively looking for a position with that company. So that tells them that you didn't do as much research as you should have. So just look at reflect on your professional goals, what you want to do. If that company is doing certain things in the field and that's something you're passionate about, whether it's like aerospace or devices or whatever that looks like for you, just kind of align those companies or those opportunities with your own professional goals. And don't limit your options as well. One of the biggest ways that students limit their options when it comes to conferences, career fairs, or just opportunities in general is the number one question that all employers usually ask. Are you willing and open to relocate for this full-time job or for this internship? Because you could be the top candidate for the role, and if you're not willing to go to California for 2 months, or not willing to move to Detroit for that full-time opportunity, that's kind of it. They're just gonna move on to their number two. So just something to think about for your job internship search. So when it comes to the conferences, make sure that you fill out your profile and all the required fields that it requires. If there are any boxes in that profile that are optional, I would say fill it out. You want to be very invested in this opportunity, or which is what conferences are. It's an opportunity to hopefully obtain one. And really what you really need to do is, because when it comes to conference, you have to pay to attend. So of course, I would think most people would want to bring their A game, to this conference or career fair. So make sure you upload your resume, upload your general purpose resume. It might be different for every conference you attend. You have your resume attached to your profile, but then as you have a couple of slides down, but you're going to be using tailored resumes to apply for each position before the conference. So browse them. It's always posted before those internships and those full-time jobs. Make sure you tailor your resume, you tailor your cover letter, and you apply before the conference. Because what happens is the employers will reach out to you before to schedule you for interview slots during the week of the conference. So don't make the mistake of not applying for anything or not filling out your profile, and then you attend the conference thinking that that's when you're going to get the interviews. It's usually not. So always before. And don't wait till the last minute, because sometimes it's a whole list of employers. Apply for those relevant positions, like I said, with a tailored resume and the tailored cover letter. And always remember, make note of what you applied for, because it's easy to remember 2 or 3 companies or positions you applied for. But when you start getting past 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 positions, you're not going to remember every single thing. To be honest. So, and sometimes what happens is, at least on employer websites, let's say you apply for the position, did everything you were supposed to do with the tailored resume and the tailored cover letter. Sometimes when you get the callback for the interview, you're thinking, awesome, I got this callback for an interview, or I got this interview slot. And when you try and look back at the position to get ready for the interview, it's gone. And you never want to be in an awkward situation where you have to ask the employer, I didn't save the job description, I didn't save the internship description, can you send it to me? That just shows you weren't prepared for the interview. So print them, save them, whatever works for you, whether it's hard copies, copies on your phone in a special folder. I mean, it's different for everyone, but just make sure the key takeaway from this is print or save those internship or job descriptions. And then what you want to do, again, before the conference, is make sure you download that agenda. If you were going in person, sometimes they have like this flyer, and it opens out into a huge map of the building with all the different sessions. Let me actually let me stop sharing for a sec and show you guys this. I think I had it open. Give me one sec. Can you guys see my screen, the SWE website?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, so this is the SWE conference schedule. Just because let's say you're going to SWE and then you log on the week of or the morning of. I mean, this gives me anxiety to look at, because this is just a lot to kind of filter through, and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I should have planned my day out, right? It keeps going. I'm talking and I'm still scrolling, right? And then this is November, this is the second week. So just make sure that you are prepared and you plan those days out. So let me get back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, plan each hour of the day. That's really what this game plan looks like. You know, accounting, I'm going to take lunch, I'm going to take a nap, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You guys might have classes in between some of those sessions, the 2 weeks of the conferences. You might still have to attend class. So just make sure you have some kind of structure about what that's going to look like for you, because the last thing you want is to be stressing about, you know, not planning for the conference or not putting all those sessions or kind of setting your day out, compared to, you know, focusing on how you're going to sell your skills and your experiences and networking with those employers. There you go. If you have heard back for scheduled interviews, make sure you note those times. Like I said, you know, once you apply for the positions, you're going to hopefully, fingers crossed, get callbacks for interview slots for the week of the conference. So make sure you put those on your agenda as well, so you don't forget. Also, make sure you note the time, the geographic time. I know in Miami, we're on Eastern Standard Time. When you're looking at those times on the conference list, make sure you see make sure you adjust it, or if it's not adjustable, if it's in like Pacific or Central Time, you do the calculation so you know what time you have to be there at that interview or that session in Eastern Time. And then be strategic with the workshops you go to, the info sessions, the hospitality suites, the employer booths that you decide to speak with at the fair, because obviously you can't go to every single thing. It's a huge list. So again, all that research ahead of time with your dream company, the types of positions, the type of work you want to do based on the postings, and then you're going to be picking those sessions so you have that chance to have that personalized interaction with the recruiter. So if you see, let's say for example, you consider yourself an amazing resume writer, right? And you see that Honeywell is going to be doing a resume writing workshop, and you want to obtain a position, a full-time job or internship with Honeywell. You're not going to their info session to learn really about resume writing. You're there to kind of have that one-on-one with them. If they ask questions and they ask the audience, what do you think about this? You are going to be that person to say, I think it's this, or I think it's that, just so you kind of have that one-on-one or that connection with that employer. And then let's say you have that interview with Honeywell and you see they're going to be doing those sessions. You're just being very strategic with your interactions and the types of events that you decide to attend, because again, you can't attend everything. So why wouldn't you want to be strategic? Don't make it be a random, this looks interesting, or let me go to that one. Always align it with your professional goals and what you hope to achieve or take away from that conference. Now we're going to talk about Zoom. I'm pretty sure we're all Zoom experts at this point. Before March, I really never got students booking appointments with Zoom. I never knew how to use Zoom, but I think it's going to keep going for the foreseeable future. But I'll just go through a couple of things here. I'm pretty sure you guys all have the app on your phone, on your laptop, iPad, your tablet, whichever. But just make sure you look at some of this stuff, just because this is the last thing you want to be thinking about during your interview or your networking sessions. Sometimes, you know, this is also very important. Make sure you kind of get the lighting right. You know, don't have the light in the background, because then you see in the second picture, it's too dark, kind of, you know, and then just kind of, I would say use natural light, or if you have like a lamp or something, put that in front of you so that it kind of highlights your face. Don't be like all the way in on the camera so they're kind of seeing everything on your face, but don't be all the way in the back where you're off in the distance. A good in between would be good. And for most of you on the camera right now, like, that's exactly what you want to be going for. If you could use a virtual background, like what I'm using if you want, if you feel like where you're going to be is not going to be good, or if like the wall is dirty or whatever, you know, use a virtual background. But just make sure if you're not using it, there's no distracting things, like if it's your bed and the bed isn't made, or, you know, it's just people walking back and forth. Just kind of limit all those distractions as much as you can. And then of course, you know, if your table is really low and your laptop is too, you know, use books to kind of raise everything up so your face is in the like level with the camera. Make sure you do test calls and everything before with your family or your friends. Check the mic. Am I breaking up? Can you barely hear me? Am I too loud? Just make sure you check all that stuff before the conference. Like I said, choose a spot where you can control the surroundings. Natural light is always preferred, depending, but just a couple more things there to kind of look at. But yeah, head and shoulders visible. Headphones are really helpful if you feel like you are not afraid, but concerned that you're going to be asking them to repeat. You could use headphones. Don't lean in, like I said, smile and nod. I know sometimes people say to look at the camera when you're speaking to the person, but I like to look at the person on the screen, and that doesn't look like you're making eye contact. But sometimes I feel like I'm trying to juggle looking at the camera versus looking at the person. So if you feel like you can handle that maneuver, fine. But if you would prefer to look at the person instead of looking at the camera, you can. I don't think it's going to be an issue. They're not going to be, I'm not giving this person the opportunity because they didn't look at the camera. They were looking at the Zoom box. So yeah, smile and nod to show you're listening. I know since it's virtual, it might kind of sound ridiculous, but just kind of play the game. That's really what it is. Just make it look like you are engaged and listening and being receptive to what the person is saying. And then avoid distracting things, like if you have like a huge necklace on, or you're wearing a neon green jacket, just keep it conservative. That's the main thing. And this is just kind of the view from the back. Make sure you have hard copies of your resume, because what you don't want to run into is you have the copies of the resume on your screen, and then you're trying to minimize the zoom, you're trying to switch screens, you have a ton of different windows open, and then that's making you very nervous because you're trying to do so many things at the same time. So make sure you have hard copies of the resume. If you have an iPad with you or a separate computer, you could use that for the resume if you want. Make sure you have the standard, old school pen and paper to take notes. Don't do the whole typing thing. I'm trying to type while the recruiter is talking, because number one, if your mic is on, it's like tap, tap, tap. And then it doesn't look like you're engaged with what they're saying, right? So even if you are writing, it looks like you're looking down, but always tell them, like straight from the get-go, just to let you know I'm going to be taking a couple notes. So I might look down, it might look like I'm not looking, but just to kind of give that, from the get-go, so they don't think you're not paying attention. And then make sure you have a glass of water. I have the bottle, which is not as elegant as a glass. So definitely use a cup or something. I think that looks nicer than, or what Mariana is using, like a chug. But just, that's the least, but thought I would bring that up. And then you can use your phone. I would not recommend it. That screen is too small. The phone is going to fall over. Someone's going to call you and it's going to take up the whole screen. So don't use a phone. If that's all you have, okay. But try, if you can, borrow some kind of laptop or something, or a desktop, so you could and the screen is bigger. So don't use a phone. All right, so when it comes to the phone, I forgot, make sure it's on mute, make sure it's silenced, not in your view. I know usually when you get the IG DMs or the stuff you want to look, so it looks like, what's that person looking at? Just kind of put the phone away, especially when you have that one-on-one with the recruiter. So I'm done on time, okay. So during the actual career fair or conference, ignore the handshake thing, because this is going to be, not through handshake. Oh, I think this means handshake like in person. I was thinking, or handshake platform, but you're not going to be shaking any physical hands by any means. But still remember the nonverbals that we are going to discuss right now. So some common nonverbals that people make in person and virtually is kind of not making eye contact. That doesn't mean not making eye contact with the camera. That means not being engaged with the screen. So looking away, looking down, just being distracted, and just the impression that you're not there in that moment with the recruiter. The second one is having very little knowledge of the company. So that kind of goes back to the research. Make sure you're in the know with what exactly they do. Make sure if it's a position that you are interviewing for, you know exactly what that position entails, whether it's for an internship or a full-time job. Just being as informed, as over prepared as you can be is going to be for the best. And of course, smile. If you are not someone who typically smiles a lot or not, again, just play the game, smile, look very interested and engaged, because people like to see people smiling. In your head, you could be thinking, this is amazing, this is super, I'm super excited, but it's not coming across visually to that recruiter. So just kind of go with the flow. And then a couple more statistics here. 55% are, look at how you dress, walk through the door. Obviously, that's not the case here. My thing with this is make sure you're not halfway there attire-wise. So don't put the jacket on and everything, and then from the waist down, you're just in the pajama pants or underwear or something like that, because mentally you're only going to be halfway there. Because I know it sounds ridiculous, because even before COVID, when I used to have job interviews and it was over Skype or even on the phone, I would put the whole thing on just because it put me in the mindset to sell my skills and experiences to the employer. So, just a recommendation, it really does help. If I'm being honest, it helps me, it helps most of my students. It just really puts you in that mindset to be on your A game. Try and limit this is 38%, which is not that high, but I know a lot of people like to kind of use filler words. I've probably used it a bit in this presentation already, may have noticed it or not. Things like, it's okay to have moments of silence in between, your thoughts, especially in the networking sessions or in the interviews. So just be aware of it if you can. You don't have to overthink it, but don't be one of those candidates where every other word is a because then it tends to get distracting. So of course, one of the biggest parts of the conference is the elevator pitch. And I'm pretty sure, I hope most of you have heard of the elevator pitch. I have a lot of students who tend to over prepare it and to stress about the pitch, and you really shouldn't be. It's supposed to be a quick conversation with that recruiter. It's just like an introduction. I'm going to kind of show you guys how you kind of work through that initial conversation. Just a couple key components there that you want to talk about: your education, your major, if you're a sophomore, junior, when you graduate, what you're looking for, if you've applied for something. There's no cookie cutter way for every person, because my elevator pitch is going to be different from each person in this room, right? And then we're not going to try it. I used to do it at FIU, where I'd have people volunteer to do elevator pitch, and no one ever would want to do it. But I'm not going to put you guys through it, but I'll show you how you can answer this. Let me actually use this first. So this is past, present, future, which is what I like to recommend to my students to kind of frame or to give the elevator pitch some context. So you start with, like, you could think about what you've done in the past, all right? It's always, your elevator pitch is always going to be different for each employer you speak to, and depending on the positions that you've applied for with them. So you could talk about past internships really quickly. I've had an internship with ABC company. I'm currently doing research with Professor ABC. Present could be, of course, I'm currently a mechanical engineering student. I plan to graduate in May of 2022. Right now, I'm looking for an internship that's really going to help me develop ABC 123. I saw that your company like Honeywell, Boeing, whoever, had this amazing internship. I applied for the position. I really like the fact that the internship focuses on this or focuses on that. And then you kind of transition real quick into the future, kind of tying it back to the past and the present, saying, based on this opportunity I saw you guys had, or based on what the company is currently doing in the field, this is what I hope to do or hope to learn or whatever. So it's never even going to be 30 seconds. That's kind of long. It's never going to be a minute. That's, super long. Don't be caught in the trap of rehearsing. Definitely practice your elevator pitch, but don't rehearse it, because recruiters, once you kind of start getting into that rehearsed tone of voice where they could tell that you are kind of giving a spiel from memory, they're not going to interrupt you. They're not going to say anything, but they're going to just kind of sit there and wait for you to finish. So past, present, future is what you should think of when you are kind of framing that elevator pitch. It doesn't have to be each one. It could just be present, future. It could be future, present, could be past, future, because it's always going to be different for you and your own experiences. So back to the key components. Again, you could pull from this, relevant experiences, employments that you're seeking, interest in the company. So just practice it, but never rehearse. And if you have a Skype interview or a phone interview, you can have notes. I'm not saying you can't, but don't have stuff written down where you feel like you're going to read it. So don't have sentences or paragraphs. You could have bullet points, and don't have it on your desk, because you're going to want to look down and they're going to say, okay, he has or she has notes reading. You could put the sticky notes, on the left side of the screen, so it still looks like you're looking at the person or you're still engaged. So some ideas here, I kind of went through a bit there. So who you are, your major, what you have to offer, the types of positions you're interested in. I won't read through this whole slide just because we have about 15 minutes left and have a couple more things to get through. But just be prepared that once you start your pitch, sometimes you're going to get interrupted. So based on what you say, so if you kind of, if then at any point during your pitch, you say, this past summer I had an internship with Boeing doing ABC. I know I'm looking for this internship with Lockheed doing something similar. They might interrupt you for you to focus on what you did, or they might ask you some questions about your internship that you had in the past. So whatever, take cues from the recruiter, whatever direction they want to take the conversation, go in that direction. Don't be one of those candidates where you're like, hold on, let me finish my pitch and then we could talk about that. So just whichever direction they take it, go in that, just follow that path. So again, it's just a couple more bullet points here, or things you could think about. Ask questions about openings. Of course, you would have, apply for all that stuff before, but if you don't see anything posted, that's your chance to ask. Watch for cues, maintain that eye contact if you can, state those qualifications. All of these are ways that you can, kind of up that elevator pitch. And the biggest one there, I think, is being confident and showing enthusiasm. It's okay to be nervous. They expect it. It's never going to be, if you're nervous or you stutter or whatever, they're going to say, let's move on to the next person. But just try and be confident with your pitch as much as you can, and show that you are enthusiastic and not, like low energy. That's the word I was looking for. Show excitement, because that does play a huge role. A couple of interpersonal skills you could kind of go through, speak clearly, concisely. I've gone through all of this already. Be open, honest. Don't make any lies up or fib. I don't think I'm a good, liar. Some people are. Some people can really, BS some stuff and you would think it was true. But I would think most people are not good at that, and I would never recommend it, because it could always come to bite you in the future if you kind of said you did something or you had a skill and it just turned out not to be true. So always be very honest with your answers or your interactions with recruiters. At the closing interaction, whether it's a closing networking event, hospitality suite, or interview, or at the career fair, always ask for like next steps, business cards, those types of things, just because you don't want to kind of just, be left hanging. So always ask follow-up questions, be very engaged. That way, don't let it just be a one-way street. It should be a two-way conversation. And at the end of it, just, you could ask if you could follow them on LinkedIn or ask to connect on LinkedIn. Just kind of see where it goes, but don't, just make sure you have a very good closing interaction with them. And then just a couple more bullet points there, pretty standard. Write notes. Yeah, this one is really good. Make sure you write your notes with that interaction. Especially, I've had this with students at the actual in-person conferences, because same for virtual. Once you start talking to all these people, you're gonna forget who you spoke to, whose name belongs to who, which person was with which company. So a strategy that most students have used is, let's say you get their business card or you have a notebook or something. Once you finish talking to that person, just take 5 minutes to kind of jot down some notes about what you talked about, what the next steps were, because, obviously you're going to have like a portfolio now of 10, 15, 16, 20 companies you've spoken to, the ones you've applied for, and you want to remember the next day or in the future what you discussed and what the next steps were. And this last one, go on to the next employer. I didn't talk about this specifically, but when it comes to the career fair, make sure, again, you do all your research ahead of time, identify your top companies. So let's say you have a top 10, you're not going to go to number 1 first, because then you're going to be nervous, right? Because this is the first recruiter of the fair that you're speaking to. They're your top company. You're you're putting all your chips on the table. You're really hoping to get an internship or a full-time job. Start with number 10, or even a company you really have no interest in. That way, when you get to your number 1, 2, 3, you've already practiced with 6, 9 other people. So that's a strategy that really does help. Don't go to your number 1 first. So at the career fair, let's say something happens, life happens and you can't make the interview. Hopefully that doesn't happen to anyone. You can always, decline the offer for an interview. Let's say you've already accepted something, just a polite decline of the offer. And, you could always book me. We could talk about this way more in detail. But did someone have a question? I heard a thing there. No? Okay. Just a couple bullet points here. You could ask them to connect, ask for the business cards, don't burn bridges, and just, very standard, thank them for their time. And, you just kind of keep it moving and onto your next interaction. So after the career fair, always make sure you send those thank you emails, those thank you DMs via LinkedIn, just so that you are kind of doing very industry standard career management practices. Send them thank you notes, follow up within, like after the career fair, after the conference. I wouldn't wait 2 to 3 weeks. Or this is actually before I get to this bullet point. Send it 2 to 3 days after the career fair conference. You could do it the same day or even the next day, but don't let it go past 3 days and you haven't sent a follow-up. Let's say you apply for something, you had the interview at the conference and you haven't heard back or something like that. Past 3 weeks, it's okay for you to reach out via email to kind of see, just kind of reiterate your interest, the fact that you had the interview 2 or 3 weeks ago, whatever, and to kind of see what the next steps were. Just a couple here, maintain those professional contacts every 4 to 6 months. Super important via LinkedIn. That's the main way that you keep those connections. And then this bullet point here was kind of what I mentioned in the previous slide or previous 2 slides about having an Excel sheet, if that works for you, if Excel is something you use, of all the companies, the positions, who you spoke to, phone numbers, emails, communication, bullet points, just a very structured way so you're not, all over the place at the virtual conference. Some no's at the career fair, not having enough information about them, just not doing research is what this is kind of going for. Lacking enthusiasm or interest. I like to kind of say, again, play the game. I know sometimes students get very nervous when it comes to these types of events or interviews. And what I kind of like to frame it as is, I'm sure you guys have heard the term fake it till you make it. In the beginning, you're portraying a very confident persona, you're pitching your skills, your experiences, and it's kind of like acting. That's what it might feel like to you. So if you kind of frame it that way where I'm playing a part, that might help you reduce the nerves, right? And then as you kind of play that part for several interviews, several interactions, you're kind of what's happening is you're developing the skill, right? You're developing networking skills, interviewing skills. And then way into the future, in the very beginning, if you look back, you think, originally I said, let me pretend or fake it like I was playing a part to kind of, be on my best. But way in the future, you're looking back and you're thinking, it's not really faking it anymore. I've actually developed these skills. I've developed the art of networking, the art of interviewing. So that's one way I've found students have found helpful to kind of, reduce nerves. Hopefully that kind of made some sense. You don't have to kind of think of it that way, but just a tip I could kind of give you guys. So don't ask about salary at the career fair. That's something you should always have done before the career fair in your research, using LinkedIn salary calculator, using Glassdoor, just using Google, Bureau of Labor Statistics. Just having all that information ahead of time is what you would want to do, because when you ask about salary at the conference or the fair, it kind of shifts the perspective from you being enthusiastic or interested in the company and their positions to just the money. So I would never recommend asking about that. Don't be one of those people who grab free stuff with this virtual anyways. But at the actual conferences, I used to see students with like a whole basket or bag full of giveaways. That's not the intention of the conference. Make sure you make that eye contact if you can over the camera. Make sure you have a good old notebook or a separate laptop to take notes, not on the one you're actually interviewing for or using. Obviously, we're not going to be talking about handshakes because there are no handshakes virtually. And make sure you 100% apply for all those opportunities before the actual fair. And then this is about my last slide, I think. Log in early, don't wait till the last minute, kind of set all that stuff up before, because I know virtually there are like lines where you have to virtually join the line, and there could be hundreds of students in the line to talk to the recruiter. So make sure you do all that stuff early and try not to be the last to the party with joining the line. Remember, while you're there to network, to hopefully obtain an internship or a job. Make sure you have your questions prepared. Again, a two-way street. If you are at the fair or in the virtual conference and there's a company there that you didn't research before, I mean, remember you kind of planned your day out. You could take some time to quickly research them on your phone. If let's say you kind of got thrown into a networking session with them, just to kind of be on your A game and you're not completely clueless. And then I think that's most it. I've talked about most of those things already. Being confident, personable, just being as prepared as you can be. So I have about 5 minutes, probably go as much as 10, but can I take any questions when it comes to the conference, the career fair, the networking, the interviewing, the applications, anything like that?
What would you say about a dress code when it comes to virtually going to interviews and things like that?
Yeah, so when it comes to the virtual interviews, my recommendation is that you put the full attire, the full suit on as if you were going to be there in person. Don't do it halfway where you're kind of just from the waist up in professional attire, because again, like I mentioned, you're going to be there mentally halfway. When you're in the full thing, you're in a unique position to sell your skills and your experiences to that employer. It's a subconscious thing. And then also you don't want to have that awkward scenario where I've had employers who've asked students to stand up so they could see the attire, or, if you had to jump up for something, if there was an emergency. And then I know that one employer who did ask for the student to stand up, and they kind of did, pretended that the camera went off to try and put the clothes on or put something together. But the full thing is what I recommend.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hello, I have a question too.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, you could go ahead, Ricardo.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna try for this not to happen, but in case I don't know something about the company or they ask me something and I don't know, how do I avoid a situation how do I avoid technically responding directly to that in case I don't know, how would I play it off?
Okay, so if they ask you an interview question, or if it's just you're networking and they ask you something, don't try and make something up. Just be very honest, right? Think really deep. You don't have to jump straight into the answer. Take a minute to think. But I would always recommend being very honest. If you dig deep and you just can't remember ever doing something like that, or whatever the question is, you could straight up say, I haven't had the chance to work on something like this, or done done that or whatever, but I have done something similar to that, which would be my project doing ABC 1, 2, 3. So you could give a similar thing. But I know some recruiters, I forget which company it was, they have a sheet and they have certain questions that they need everyone to answer. And I've had students who have, said that, they gave that answer. I haven't had the chance to do that, or I haven't had that experience. And the recruiter pressed them, we really need you to give us an answer. So, hopefully you're not in that situation, but it's okay to be honest to say, no, I haven't had that experience or skill set, but I have this instead. So always kind of pivot or switch to something else, to not just end it with, I haven't had that, full stop.
All right, thanks.
No problem.
There's another question on the chat by Sabrina, and it says, when networking after you're done research, what are good ways to start conversation or good type of questions to ask?
So let me look. So when networking after you've done your research, what are some good ways to start conversation or good types of questions to ask? Okay, so the types of questions that you'd obviously do your research about the company before, and that's a good way for you to kind of have questions ready to talk about. If they have positions posted and you've applied, that's also a good segue into our conversation with them. But you could, don't feel like it always has to be engineering related. It could be a compliment on their, necklace or their jacket or something, and then you transition into a conversation about your skills, your experiences, what you're looking for. But the main thing is kind of going back to the elevator pitch, right? You've done the research, you have your pitch ready, and then it's just an introduction, your name, your major, what you're looking for, what you know about the company, and then you just kind of take cues from them to see where the conversation goes next. It's hard for me to give you a exact scenario of what it's going to look like, because it's always so different. It's just such a wide spectrum.
I wanted to chime into a quick, if that's okay. But what I would like to do, for example, is kind of have questions about them specifically, maybe what they do in the company. That way you can learn more about the company. Maybe what's their favorite thing about the company. Those are simple questions that are more personal and are more like, hey, I'm looking to see if I want to work in your company, and if I like the culture of your company, or if I like how people are in the company. So those are kind of questions like, what's your favorite thing about what you do every day? Or why do you work for this company? Why do you work at whatever? And I think those questions also kind of let them think of hey, this person is not only interested in the position, but also in the way we work together. And so, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mariana. Yeah, so those are great points for, whether it's a networking event or the actual interview Q&A part. Just remember, at the very end of every interview, they're 100% going to ask, do you have any questions for us? And you definitely should. So some of those questions that Mariana suggested are good. They could be questions related to the position, the skills required or whatever. So yeah, those are some good points there. Any other questions I could answer?
What should we do if we're because I'm more of an introverted person, and I feel like I have trouble continuing the conversation. And so what would your advice be to that?
Okay, so with that scenario, try with your questions, try and ask open-ended questions. Don't ask questions where it's gonna just be the answer full stop, because then the conversation doesn't really progress. So questions where it kind of turns into a discussion, like what Mariana said, what are some of your responsibilities at the company? Do you like working there? That's more of a discussion-based thing, not so much what's your position. They're going to be I'm a college recruiter, and then it's just full stop and then crickets, right? So just kind of ask as many open-ended questions as you can. And if you are an introverted person, the goal is to kind of keep the conversation, kind of flowing. And that's the key for it. Open-ended is what you should be striving for. If you just do a quick, Google search for open-ended questions for interviews, or just open-ended questions, you could get a whole list of ideas there.
Thank you.
No problem. I know we have SHPE. I know we have SWE in 2 weeks. SHPE might be the same, I think, in 2 weeks or a week.
It's next week. It
Next
already
week.
started, SHPE, but
Okay, yeah.
the competitions, but the actual conference stuff starts next week.
Awesome. So I know today's presentation was just a very general and broad, list of topics, but definitely if you have unique circumstances or you want more of a personalized approach to it, definitely book me for an appointment, and we could kind of talk about some of these things more in depth.
I have a question towards when you want to tailor the resume towards certain company, should it be in the objective, tailor it to the specific position you want in that company?
Yeah, so if you are using an objective, make sure that objective is specific to the company and the opportunity that you are applying for. So that's one part of it. Remember, you don't have to use an objective. You could use a summary of qualifications, or you could just start with your education. But it kind of goes further than the objective or that heading. it's mostly in the body of your experiences. So whether it's the projects, the work experience, the internship experience, research, volunteer work experience, you want to be looking at number one, at the key words that they have in that job description. Could be words like manage, communicate, develop, work. You don't want to use synonyms, words that mean the same thing. Just because these applications goes through software and the software matches the words on the resume with the words in the description. And if you don't meet that certain percentage threshold, your resume gets thrown out and you get that very generic email saying, thank you for applying, but we're not interested. So it's not always the keywords as well, because if you look on those descriptions and you see that they're looking for a problem solver, a team player, someone with excellent communication skills, you want to incorporate those soft skills into the way you word your bullet points. So if they're looking for a team player, a good example again, and I see a bullet point, worked in a team of 4 to accomplish ABC, that indirectly tells me that you are a team player and it's supported by this bullet point. So the theme of your resume should align with the description. So if I'm the recruiter and I look at the resume and I look at the job description or internship description and I read through it, it should immediately click that this person is qualified for the position. Also remember to put those skills that they're looking for. If they have something like AutoCAD, Microsoft Office, you want to have all those listed. But just as much as you can. Some job descriptions are very long, some are very short. Whatever they give you, just use it. And you might run into the scenario where you are applying for company A and company B, and they're more or less looking for the same thing, skill-wise and experience-wise. You might not have to put as much effort into tailoring it because it's more or less the same, but you might come across company C, which is asking for a completely different skill set, and you might need to tailor your bullet points a bit more just so you have that match in terms of word match and skill match in terms of incorporating the skills into the bullet points.
Thank you.
No problem. And also remember the cover letter. It's never optional, I would say. Some people say it's optional. It's never going to hurt you. Only time it does hurt you is if it's a generic cover letter that doesn't say much, or if you made the mistake of using company A's cover letter for company B. So always include a cover letter with your applications.
Thank you.
No problem. Awesome. So we are at like what, 6:07. Does anyone have any last questions before we wrap up? I'm a bit older than some of you guys, so I'm gonna get ready for the debate. Hopefully you guys are watching the debate tonight at 9, whoever you support, but that's what I am gonna be doing later. I'm pretty sure if it's between the debate and getting ready for the conference, I would say get ready for the conference.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you to SWE and IEEE for setting this up.
Thank you everyone for attending as well.
No problem. It was my pleasure. Just remember, if you want, if you guys want, just book me. I might not have as much time slots available, so if anything, you could email me your questions. That's my contact info there. So if anything, just let me know and I'll be available to help you guys. No problem. Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm gonna go. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.